Welcome to BACC's Sunday Livestream with your host, Russ Ewell. We want you to get the most out of the service today, so our service resources can be downloaded at bacc.cc/live. Simple notes and doodle notes allow you to jot down points, scriptures, and thoughts that will make it easier to share with friends throughout the week. We have some new music from Freedom Flows for you today. The Sunday Morning Jetpack crew will also make an appearance. The Glory Days team has some inspiring words of wisdom as well. Our stories of the week will tug some heartstrings.
Hey kids, today for our game, we're going to spin the giving wheel again. This time, you'll be able to do things to include other people, so keep your eye out for it. Let's see what it lands on.
Our social media challenge is still going on. Bingo is all about encouraging others in the neighborhood or friendship circle. Just like regular bingo, in Bingo you can complete a full row, column, or go for total blackout. Take a picture or video of your action of encouragement and post on Facebook or Instagram with your completed Bingo card with the hashtag Bingo and tag @the.bacc for a chance to win a prize. Our socially distant drive-in movie night is this Saturday, September 12th. It is sold out. We look forward to seeing everyone there. Visit bacc.cc/drive-in for the latest information. If you're looking to get connected with people in your area, text BACC to 31996 and someone will reach out to you. If you want to sign up for the Deep Spirituality newsletter, text Get Deep to 31996. Before we get started, make sure to take a moment to like the video today. When you like it, you help us grow to reach new people. And while you're at it, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Now, let's get going with our service today.
Good morning, and it's great to see everyone, digitally that is. This is our live stream, and we've been doing this now for a long time. In fact, so long that we're heading into 6 months, and guess what? The county I live in just now allowed you to get a haircut. How about that for progress? One of the things I may mention again later on is we need to go to work praying. And I know different ones of us have different opinions about the pandemic, about vaccines and all that. But let's go to work praying that we can get a vaccine out that works, that's healthy, that's safe, and that puts this pandemic down. Because we need to see each other, we need to be around each other, and we need to be able to go back to living our lives. And rather than being hopeless, we need to be hopeful. And I think prayer will do that. I want to encourage us this week, on Tuesday and on Wednesday, to find someone to pray with, and just to take time out to pray with somebody and say, this is our pandemic prayer. We're going to beat it with prayer. I know there are people who don't believe in prayer, but that's unfortunate for them. I believe in it. I know many of you believe in it. No, I think all of you believe, even those who are a little on the fence about whether God exists believe, hey, can't hurt to put a prayer out there to God to ask him to move. And I think based on what we're seeing in the news, it's very possible if we pray that we'll see one or two announced that are safe in October, and we'll be able to see it out before the end of the year. And we'll cover some data later on that tells us just why we need that. Now, keep enjoying yourself. I want to tell each one of you that we're thankful that you tune in, and we're thankful that you subscribe. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I know we keep telling you about it, but that's because every time you hit that subscribe button, we hear from people in different parts of the world, in different parts of this country, that we didn't even know were watching or why they'd be watching. And it's because when you subscribe, you give YouTube the fuel it needs to be able to take this good news message to more and more people. And we're grateful for you. We're grateful also to all of you because special contribution was a huge victory. And we believe it was a victory of God, but it was also a victory of your hearts. We're doing really well during one of the most difficult times in history in the country and in the Bay Area. And I want to thank you for that. And we want to thank you for those who are not necessarily going to our church, who also gave, because it's making possible some incredible work that we're doing. You'll see some of that today, but I just want to encourage you on it. And I want you to know that it is amazing what's happening in our fellowship during this time. The things we've gotten better at doing, digital stuff, the things we've gotten better at doing, small groups, social distancing, staying in contact, Zooming, everybody is doing a great job. So if you've been feeling discouraged or down, I want you to know, even though we may feel a little ragged and a little worn out, we're doing a great job. And so today, I want us to think about helping other people. That's right. I want us to think about helping other people. We're helping each other. We're doing a good job. We're staying in there with God. We're trying hard. A lot of us are growing in ways we hadn't grown before, coming to realizations and revelations and illuminations, kind of like the old Ralph Waldo Emerson quote that the most important part of life is the illumination, the turning point, that a lot of us are having those. But today our theme is finding connection in the disconnected world. And that is about not just our own selves being connected, but about helping other people be connected. I know for me, if it had not been for God and the scriptures, I would have never broken through the walls that limited me from being emotionally available to people, emotionally honest with people. I would have never begun the journey of trying to overcome my fear of intimacy, my distance, my unwillingness to be vulnerable. All these things would have caused a problem. And I'm not saying I've arrived. I haven't. I still have a lot of work to do in that area. But guess what? That is, if you would, the magic of Christianity, true Christianity. Christianity where we live by the scriptures, we obey the scriptures, and we build relationships with other people who do the same to help us grow. And so let's get into it. Finding connection in the disconnected world. Let's start with our first segment, the complexity of humanism. What does humanism mean? When I use the term humanism, what I'm really talking about is a world in which we believe that people, mankind, is the be-all, end-all. That it is human strength, human intelligence, human talent, human strategy, human will that makes things work in the world. The position of Scripture is that humanism does not work, that ultimately humanism will fail, and there is a complexity to humanism. How about we dive on in? Sure, you're ready. The complexity of humanism. 1 Corinthians 3, verses 1 through 4 in the Christian Standard Bible. For my part, brothers and sisters, I was not able to speak to you as spiritual people, but as people of the flesh, as babies in Christ. I gave you milk to drink, not solid food, since you were not yet ready for it. In fact, you are still not ready, because you're still worldly. For since there is envy and strife among you, are you not worldly and behaving like mere humans? For whenever someone says, I belong to Paul, And another, I belong to Apollos. Are you not acting like mere humans? If you look at the very end of that in verse 4, he's talking about how religion or Christianity became so divided. What it is people began to follow personalities instead of following Jesus. That's part of humanism. But that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus today on the worldliness, in particular the words in bold, since there is envy and strife among you, are you not worldly? The superficiality of worldliness or humanism leads us into the polarization of envy and strife. Envy and strife are what cause polarization. Even the polarization we see today is largely caused by envy and strife. There's a lot of disharmony, there's a lot of anger, we'll talk more about that, and in some cases there's just flat out jealousy of other people having things that we don't have. And so it causes a lot of consternation. That's the complexity of humanism. Now, what we've done today, and I hope it's fun, I'm not trying to be, like exact here, but what we did today is we went fun. We went retro on you. All right, we went retro. We're going to give you two phones, and those two phones are going to give you sort of a visual of connection. And the first one's going to tell you about the complexity of humanism, or the complexity of using the old princess phone. Are some of you old enough to remember the princess phone? If you're not old enough to remember the princess phone, you just don't have the proper juice. I'm sorry. Juice. Do you know where that comes from? There's a movie called Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman. You can check it out. And in it, he's playing a real life principal. I forgot what school district he was in, who cleaned up a drug-infested, crime-infested school. And when he came in and he became successful, the students used to say, "You have the juice, principal." He had a cool name. I forgot what it was. Anyway, that's played by Morgan Freeman. You can check it out. Lean on Me. I thought of that when we were singing and listening to music, Lean on Me. The princess phone is old school. Got that rotary dial. Remember that, some of you? You used to dial up your friend, or maybe you dialed up some young lady that you wanted to ask to the prom or the Halloween dance or whatever. I did that. And you had that 7 numbers. Look at those 7 numbers. I got them for you. 4, 6, 1, 5, 5, 8. But then when you get to that 8, you hesitate. Maybe I'll get the dad on the phone. You hang up that phone. That's the princess phone. Nowadays, if you do the dialing with the smartphone, you get yourself in trouble. Can't stop it because it's gone. Anyway, look at the princess phone, the complexity of humanism. Let me explain this to you. It's just meant to be an illustration, so don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to memorize it. See, when you dial on this princess phone, things get complicated, like humanism. See, a lot of the way we build relationships is we go, oh, wait a minute, in order for me to be close to somebody, I've got to understand their past, and I got to understand their race or their ethnicity, and I got to understand the gender. And I'm not even going to get into gender. That's complicated today. I got to share their political perspective. I got to share their social status. I've got to be emotionally compatible. I've got to be spiritually compatible. You ever wonder what goes on today and why we are so disconnected? One of the reasons we're so disconnected is we see labels and not people. We see labels and not people. We see problems and not people. A lot of us go, okay, I want a friend, and we search through and we say, what friend is my same race or ethnicity? What friend is my same gender, opposite gender? What friend shares my political perspective? I know people who can't even talk to people who are of a different party than them. Can't even have a conversation. Have to say, I'll never talk about politics because the label gets in the way of the relationship. A lot of people, it's like, hey, if you don't have my education, if you don't have my financial status, if you're not in my class, if you're not of my race, I really don't want to have you over my house. I really don't want to be around you. Some people, it's like, oh, if I'm not emotionally compatible. We hear people say, I can't talk to somebody unless I'm in a safe space. You know what a safe space says? That means if you're not sensitive enough to me, if you disturb me in any way, if you make me uncomfortable in any way, and you're not safe, I can't be in a relationship with you. I'm not talking about criminal lack of safety. I'm talking about social lack of safety. Then spiritually compatible. Do you share my morals, my values, my religion, my church? Do you believe in the existence of God? Are you secular? Are you spiritual? We have a lot of things that make it complex when we rely on humanism, when we rely on people, instinct, strategy, philosophy, insights. A lot of times we can't even build a friendship anymore. We can only go see a therapist. Because the only person we know that wants to know all this about us and wants to understand all this about us is somebody you pay. Nobody else wants to sit around and find out, what were you like 0 to 4? What were you like 5 to 11? What were you like 13 to 18? What were you like 19 to 25? And can I relate to you? And do I understand that you're a socialist and you're mad that I didn't put you on the list? Could have been number 6. Share my political perspective. We're socialists. This is complexity. I'm not saying they're not important. I actually like knowing these things about people. I'm saying they're not effective. I'm saying that disconnection is sourced by the need for labels instead of the focus on people. By the focus on problems instead of the focus on people. And what Christianity does is it simplifies. Christianity wipes this out, and you're going to see it later. And it says, these things may all be true, but you don't need to dial 461-5558. We're living in the digital age. You can just ask Siri to call them up. And you don't have to do all that. The princess phone, it's gone. Now we got to get rid of label mentality and start getting into relationship mentality. Why do we need to do this? Because the world's disconnected. I want you to think not just about your Christian friends and the ones you're in your living room with. I want you to think about the people on your street, in your neighborhood that you don't know, that you cross the street to get away from. I'm not talking about a coronavirus cross the street so you have social distancing. I'm talking about a black person cross the street because you don't want to run into that person, or a Latin person cross the street because you don't want to run into that person, or a white people cross the street. Let's give some credence to that. Some of us don't want to be around white people, and so we cross the street. I'm saying that we've got to get into a mode where we stop seeing labels, where we understand that labeling people is about humanism. It's about seeing the world through humanistic eyes and not seeing the world through Jesus' eyes. And right now, with the pandemic, things are getting very bad because people are getting isolated not only by this complexity, they're getting isolated by the pandemic as well. And so things have gotten bad. Let's take a look. During the COVID-19 pandemic, prevalence of depression symptoms in the U.S. has risen across the board. Take a look at this. Before the pandemic, 16.2% of the people thought they had mild depression. Now it's 24.6%. Moderate, 5.7%. Now it's 14.8%. Moderately severe, 2.1%. Now it's 7.9%. Severe, 0.7%. Now 5.1%. This isn't something to laugh at, chuckle at, or look at being somebody else's problem. This is affecting our neighbors, our friends, our sisters, our brothers, our cousins, our extended family, people we care about, people we went to school with. We need to take seriously praying this pandemic can end because it is wreaking havoc on the lives of those who are more sensitive to the isolation. There's not something broken about these folks. It's that they are more aware of the devastation of isolation. I know some of you may be like me, where I don't always have an awareness of how devastating it is. But that's not the only reason we need to get a connected world. Today is an eLife episode. We're talking about all the work we do with eLife. We're getting deep into saying, you know what? There are people with disabilities in the world, and we're a church that believes that we want you to be served by us regardless of whether or not you go to the church or not. We do not believe it's a prerequisite that someone be a Christian, go to our church, believe what we believe at all to be a part of it. We just want to help people with disabilities overcome the stigma and the prejudice and the stereotyping. It is a huge prejudice. Look at this little infographic. People with disabilities consist of the nation's largest minority group, as well as the only group that any of us can become a member of at any time. 1 in 4 people 65 to 69 years of age have a severe disability. 56.7 million people in the U.S. have some sort of disability, and you'll see an updated number on that later. 38.3 million of them, a severe disability. 30.6 million people in the U.S. have a physical disability that affects the ability to walk. The elderly are the largest population living with a disability, and guess what? The most endangered from COVID-19. So there's a double isolation. If you don't have mobility and you're older, then you're already feeling the distance of disability, but now with the pandemic, it's gotten worse. 3.6 million people in the U.S. use a wheelchair. Around 15% of the world's population lives with disabilities. Do the math. About 7 to 8 billion people in the world, 15% of them are people with disabilities. Do the math. A third of disabled individuals require assistive technology to be able to take care of themselves at home. I shared with you last week about the company I launched called Digital Scribbler, and that's what we do, creating assistive technologies to help people speak and communicate and live. About 764,000 children and adults in the U.S. currently have cerebral palsy. It's easy to not want to pay attention to the fact that when we as a church work on connecting people with disabilities, we're doing God's work. We're doing Jesus' work. That's what we ought to be doing, and it shines a bright light for the world to see, to make us relatable and not just religious. Let's take a look at some other information. Education is a civil right for all students, but many kids with disabilities weren't receiving it this spring. This is from an article in Vox. It's a common concern among parents of kids with disabilities who are disproportionately likely to say that their kids' schooling has stalled during the pandemic. In the Parents Together survey, 35% of parents of students in special education said their kids were doing little to no remote learning, compared to 17% of families with kids in general education classes. People wonder, why as a church do we really push inclusion and support inclusion? Again, we don't care what religion. You can be Muslim, you can be Buddhist, you can be an atheist, you can be agnostic, you can be any color, you can speak any language. We just want to help. That's what we want to do. And I think for more of us, here's the data we need to why we all need to be more involved. And remember what we're talking about right here. We're talking about the complexity of humanism and how it isolates people, how it separates people, and it makes people labels. We label people: person in a wheelchair, person with a learning difficulty, person with high anxiety, person with mental health problems. And we wonder why people feel ostracized. It's because we throw a label on them, because humanism doesn't teach you compassion and empathy and understanding. It doesn't teach us to look at people and empathize rather than judge and distance and isolate. 35% of the people in this survey, and you know it's more, were looking at education in America during the pandemic, and they were saying, you know what? My kid's getting nothing. My kid's getting nothing. I lost my aid, I lost the supports, and now I'm a parent or two parents with a job, and I've got to take care of my kid in special education who's getting nothing. It's a travesty, but it underlines how exclusionary the world is to people with disabilities. And as you all know, most of you know, my wife and I are parents of kids with disabilities. And you know what? This turned me into an advocate, and guess what? Whatever you experience in life should turn you into an advocate to do good. It's not just about me, it's about all of us having a mentality that says, if I'm in a population group that is disconnected, then my work will be just like Jesus' work was, to connect people. We're being punished again, how people with intellectual disabilities are experiencing the pandemic. Roughly 61 million of Americans are with a disability of some kind, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. About 26% of the population. And in 2016, 7.37 million of those Americans were living with an intellectual or developmental disability. People wonder, why do we really try to get e-soccer, e-hoops, e-dance? Why are we working at e-gaming? Why do we do all these things? Why are we talking about e-farming? And don't worry, when the pandemic's over, we'll go to work on that. Why are we doing that? Because there are almost 8 million people in America who get nothing. They get nothing from society. And part of our job is not just to go, oh, I'm disconnected. I feel disconnected. I feel like my life isn't great. You know what? If you can communicate and you can walk and you can go get a job, your life's pretty good compared to people with disabilities. And we need to realize the complexity of humanism. Putting labels on people gets us into big time trouble, not just on race, not just on ethnicity. It gets us into big time trouble with the people that are pushed away and hidden in the shadows. And look at international places. You can find countries where people would rather have their children die than have their children be alive in those countries. There are people in countries who put their kids in closets and lock them in. I'm not talking about America. I'm talking about, it's just, they're ashamed of these kids. And that is a travesty, and God is watching. Bullying and autism. The researchers found a significant amount of isolation and even outright rejection of children and their families. More than 65% of the children were sometimes or often avoided or left out of activities by other kids. About 13% were physically bullied at least sometimes. And guess what? This stuff happens. Over in South Africa, a young boy with Down syndrome was shot and killed. That was not just about race or anything. That was about disability. It's happened in America, where people with autism have been shot and killed by the police. That's right, because they weren't understood. This is a huge issue and a huge need. And that's why, as much as we're talking about being connected and we're going to help everybody, we need to have a mentality that understands that our e-life work, our passion for esports, is not just about, oh, some of us really wanted to have something done that would help our kids because a lot of us have kids with special needs. Wrong. It's about, there is a world out there of people in pain that don't have a voice, that don't have a lobby on Capitol Hill, that are forgotten. And guess what? Jesus commands us to remember the forgotten, to see the poor, to see the invisible, and to help them. And that's what we're doing. And you know what we're doing? We're using that smartphone for that. All you do is say, hey Siri, I want to help out Fred. I want to help out Joe. I want to help out Joanne. I want to help out Betty. Not a label, but a name. And you want to know what? Kathy Sue and her buddy Nicholas Motammed, They grabbed names in high school and they said, you know what, we've got a vision for e-soccer. Well, why am I beginning to tell you that story? Here's their story of the week from Silicon Valley North. Take a look.
I am Margot Colvin, and my husband Scott and I have the pleasure of leading in Silicon Valley North. This is the story of how one teenager with a conviction for inclusion can light a spark and spread enthusiasm that catches fire and spreads from one to many. As long as she can remember, Kathy Sue has been part of e-soccer. Her love for the sport, along with her friends and family, gave her a conviction and a passion for inclusion. When Kathy was a freshman at Hillsdale High School, she made the varsity soccer team. However, her ambitions reached beyond personal achievement. She wanted to make a difference for others, not just play for herself. With the relationship connections she had with coaches and faculty at Hillsdale High School, Kathy courageously started the Best Buddies program in her sophomore year.
Having a relationship with God showed me that I put a lot of my confidence and security in playing soccer, and it was this huge part of my identity. But I didn't really feel a lot of fulfillment from it, and so I was really looking for something that was purposeful and fulfilling. A lot of times students with disabilities aren't advocated for or forgotten at school, and so it wasn't really a popular belief when I was going into high school. And so for me, I really had to have convictions and have courage and stand up for what I believe in, no matter what other people thought of.
The program was so successful that going into her junior year, she was asked to be an ambassador for the Best Buddy program, traveling to other schools, speaking and helping them start their own programs. Kathy's conviction and leadership caused the Hillsdale High School program to explode from 7 people to 65 in just a couple of months. Her program has been awarded Rookie Chapter of the Year for the state of California.
A lot of teens are looking for things that are fulfilling and to be able to do good at school. Starting up in 1 year, I was able to reach out to Neo, and Neo just saw a bunch of the activities that we were doing. And this upcoming school year, he's going to be leading the Woodside Best Buddies chapter.
Having courage to do good and change lives can spread like a fire. In a time when it is so tempting to be isolated and self-focused, Kathy's example of reaching out and helping others is an inspiration and a challenge to us all. If you have a story to share, send it to us at live@bacc.cc.
Wow. How about that, huh? That's kind of my niece right there, since Ming Su's my brother. But what an awesome story. And it shows us what we can do when we put away the princess phone of complexity and we grab a hold of the smartphone and say, hey Siri, how can I help somebody in my neighborhood or at my school, instead of trying to go through the label list and figure it out. You notice that Kathy didn't wait till she went and got a PhD in occupational therapy or in speech therapy before she started working with those kids. She got a PhD in I care about people. Awesome. Finding connection in the disconnected world, the freedom from complexity. See, we got to do like Kathy. We got to do like the team of people she had at the school. It's not about getting all complicated. It's about simplifying. And the first thing we have to do is the pursuit of freedom. Let truth unravel the complexity. We just got to get to the truth. A lot of times people say, well, I don't like having conversations that involve the Bible. I don't like talking about spiritual things. It makes me nervous and insecure. That's because the Bible, above all, levels truth at us. In John 8:31-32, then we'll go to 34-36. Jesus said to those Jews who believed in him, when you continue to embrace all that I teach, you prove that you are my true followers. He's talking about going by the Bible, not just going to a church that believes in the Bible, not just saying you believe the Bible, but actually reading the Bible and then obeying what you read in the Bible. In verse 32, for if you embrace the truth, it will release more freedom into your lives. So the Bible is saying that when we actually obey the Bible, because a lot of us read it and a lot of us praise it and a lot of us even quote it, but he's saying if you embrace the truth, it'll release more freedom in your lives. So when you read the Bible, it's going to tell you the truth about who you are and where you are. That's a good thing, because the more you know who you are, the better you're going to do. Now look, you gotta watch Disney's Mulan. And that's going to cost you a little bit of money, but I just watched it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's awesome. It's awesome. And one of the key aspects of the movie, one of the key lines of the movie is when they tell her you can't get all your powers and let... Oh, I'm not going to tell you what's in there. I'm not going to tell you about that. Are you kidding me? I'm not giving that away. But it has something to do with the truth, and it has something to do with releasing into freedom. Verse 34, I speak eternal truth. Jesus said, when you sin, you are not free. You become a slave in bondage to your sin. And slaves have no permanent standing in a family like the son does. For a son is part of the family forever. So if the son sets you free from sin, then become a true son and be unquestionably free. You know what Jesus does? You know what the Bible does? It unhooks us from our dysfunction. You can go back and watch previous episodes of the live stream. It releases us from our dysfunction. It releases us from dangerous patterns and bad patterns. I've had bad patterns in my life for a long time. I feel like I didn't grow up till I was 30 years old because I had to get all the dysfunction and all the bad learning and all the bad habits emotionally and socially out of my life. I had a lot of complexity because I was relying on myself. And then when I hit the Bible, I got a lot of truth. Now, when I first got that truth, I wasn't too happy about it. And when you start reading the Bible and you're finding out the truth, and sin, think of sin as the dysfunctions that are preventing us from having the simplicity of spirituality to build relationships of intimacy. How about that? Think about that as what sin really is about, getting it out of the way. And understand the pursuit of freedom. We got to get free. And you know what we got to get free of? Being disconnected. And guess how we get disconnected? I'm slapping these up here and you can, I don't know, they'll do something with them magical so you can get access to them later. But number one is, a lot of us think that connection is attention. It's not. It's the superficiality of celebrity. It's the superficiality of getting noticed. It's why we can get attention. I grew up getting a lot of attention, but not feeling close to anyone. It's infatuation, the superficiality of fantasy. You ever hear a song by the Doobie Brothers called What a Fool Believes? That's what that's about. It's about a guy who's infatuated with someone who he never actually dates, asks out, or builds a relationship with. It's the superficiality of fantasy. We can get really infatuated, but not be connected. We're disconnected. Ambition, the superficiality of achievement. Hey, we got the NBA playoffs going on right now. There are guys on these teams that hate each other. They don't have a good relationship, but they have a shared ambition that gets them to feel like they're connected when they're really disconnected. Opposition. Sometimes we'll settle for, if I don't have any friends, at least I can find some people that I hate. And for many of us, bitterness is our only connection to the world. We can name the people we're bitter against. We can't name anybody we're close to, just the people we're mad at. Number 5, sensuality, the superficiality of false intimacy, pornography. We can go, oh man, I feel bad I look at pornography. No, we're looking at pornography because we don't have sensitivity. We have sensuality. We're living by our senses. We're not living by our awareness. The superficiality of false intimacy and nostalgia. I'm guilty of a lot of these. Some in the past, some in the present, some right now. Nostalgia, the superficiality of memory. I'll do that when I'm under stress. I'll go back. And I'll think about times when I wasn't under stress. It can be nostalgic. You can go, oh man, we were such good friends in 7th grade. You know what? You're 75 years old now. I think it's time to get past 7th grade. You're 55 years old. It's time to get past it. Sometimes we go, oh, I have a lot of friends. Yeah, but that's from 1953, 1973, 1993. We get nostalgic instead of realizing, oh, I don't have any friends today. I'm disconnected. These are the 6 affects of disconnection that we get mistakenly think, oh, I've got relationships. No, we've got intention, infatuation, ambition, opposition, sensuality, and nostalgia. Guess what? There are people who have broken through this, gotten through this, fought it out. And here comes eSoccer again with a story about David Young and Luis Ramos. And guess what I like about this story? You're about to find out. Take a look.
I'm Ray Kim, and my wife Amy and I lead the San Francisco sector of our church. I want to tell you a story about the inspiration of inclusion. How one conversation between 2 friends led to ordinary lives being extraordinarily changed, impacting entire families.
As a high school sophomore, David Young was invited to eSoccer in San Francisco by his neighbors, the Marquez family. Being passionate about sports and familiar with his own special needs, David decided to go and fell in love not only with eSoccer, but the opportunity to mentor and serve other kids in the community.
When I went there, I enjoyed seeing the kids having fun and the parents were happy for their child too. And it motivates me to just come out every week and always being the first one there to set up.
Having discovered a new vision for his life from the Bible, David eagerly shared it with others, beginning with his high school friend Luis Ramos. Luis played soccer for their high school, and David invited him to come to join him at eSoccer to use his talents to also help the kids David was coaching.
Including eSoccer being an inclusion of people who may or may not have disabilities, both different type of kids, for them both have fun with each other. That was just the best feeling ever right there. there, just me being able to like share my love for soccer with them.
Having also experienced a learning disability and speech impediment growing up, Luis also fell in love with serving at East Soccer and was inspired by David's life change and example of friendship. Luis wanted to study the Bible. He was deeply impacted by the opportunity to serve others in the community through East Soccer and later E-Hoops to change people's lives. After resolving relationships in his own family, Luis became a Christian and was baptized, and his entire family came out to support him, sharing about the incredible change they had seen in Luis's life with his new passion to serve others.
Me being able to like be a part of Bible studies is it's just like being able to like build a closer like friendship relationship with them, like kind of like the side release and like also that like I'm not alone in this, that they can like trust myself, trust others who are with them, to have that close, intimate friendship. It's really awesome to like be able to see that and to grow closer with them.
People in my life who studied with me served me a lot during the time when I was studying, and I want to get back to like those people who are like currently studying right now.
Their passion to serve and empower others inspired many other friends to come out and serve alongside them. It just took one Saturday morning conversation with a neighbor that opened the door to David's destiny and heart transformation. This changed not only David's life, but his friend Luis's life, leading to their families, friends, and an entire community being impacted through the inspiration of inclusion. Both David and Luis are looking forward to their new college semesters to continue changing lives, to change the community, and to change the world.
You know, Greg Bodziak and I got together and started talking about e-soccer in the 90s. And when we got going, originally I only did it to help my kids have something to do with friends and family. And we got together. And then people would drive by and they'd want to join. They'd come and ask and say, can we be a part of it? Eventually, as it grew, there were even a couple came up to us one day and said, by that time we had hundreds of kids coming because we only started with like 8. Hundreds of kids were coming at that point, and we were in Beach Park, I think, in a city called Foster City. And a couple came walking up to us and they said, hey, we heard you're the people who run this, and we talked to them and chatted. They said, you were about to buy a house in this neighborhood. And I said, oh, that's cool. And the wife said, I just want to let you know the reason we wanted to buy a house in this neighborhood is we saw your program and we saw you guys out here, and we thought we want to live in a neighborhood like that. And that's why we bought a house right over there. In the same way, people have come up to me at different times at e-soccer and they've been enjoying it. They don't know anything about the fact that I serve as a minister in the church or anything like that. And then they'll meet somebody or talk to somebody who somehow they find out goes to a church, and they'll be like, oh, I want to go. And I've had people come to me and say, oh, I want to go. And I go, you don't have to go to church. You don't have to be a part of this. You don't need to do this. You can do it. That's not a prerequisite. That's not something we push. And what surprises me is how often people, I guess what they see is they see the love and they think, I want to check out what's going on and figure out where is all this love coming from. So on occasion, you get these amazing stories like David and Luis, and you sit there and you think, wow, that's not even our goal. Our goal is just to love people and take care of people. But somehow, I guess it's what Jesus said. If you let your light shine in the community, then some people are going to now be able to find God a little bit better. So I guess that's good. But I want you to know, if you're out there and you're saying, I never, ever, ever in my whole life want to be a part of a church, but I want to be a part of the e-stuff, it's totally fine. That's totally, totally, totally great. Jesse Donia sent us an email this week, and he's the brother of Josh Donia. And guess what? Josh doesn't even know this, I don't think. And Jesse came as a high school student, and Jesse is aware of our church. I don't think, he's not trying to be, part of all the stuff we do, but he had an idea. He said, hey, I'd like to get e-music going. And you know what, Jesse, if you're watching, I just want to let you know, we're going to take you up on that offer. But again, it's not about anybody having to sign up or join or go wherever. We really want you to know that if you're watching, because thousands of you watch this and a lot of you don't go to church, and that's okay. That's okay. You can still be a part of these programs. So I just want to make that point so we don't forget it. Finding connection in the disconnected world, the simplicity of spirituality. The thing about being spiritual that is an advantage is you smooth out all that complexity. You go from the princess phone to that smartphone. You just say the name with Siri instead of having to dial the numbers, and end up getting all complex. So the number 2 thing we want to remember is the spirituality of being relational. We've covered this, seeing people instead of labels. That's what I liked about the previous story. Galatians 3:27. For those of you who were baptized into Christ have been clothed with Christ. There is no Jew or Greek, slave or free, male and female, since you're all one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you're Abraham's seed, heirs according to the promise. What the Bible tells us is, when you become a Christian, leave your identity at the door. Your primary identity now becomes, I am of Christ. That doesn't mean that you're no longer Chinese, or you're no longer Filipino, or you're no longer Korean. It means that your way of connecting to people is now simplified. And you now begin to focus on being a certain kind of spiritual person instead of understanding all the labels that society puts on people. Does that make sense? And here's how to be a spiritual person. This is what Christianity is about. Number one, we get connected spiritually first with humility, the spirituality of need. What that means is everything about connection starts with us seeing our need for people. And I know in my life, I failed out of the gate on number one. I couldn't get to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 because I couldn't get out of the gate on number one. Have you ever been there before? You can't even get out of your own way. Humility's the way. The spirituality to see and admit need. Number two, vulnerability. That's step two, the spirituality of truth. It's not just communicating your emotions. A lot of us talk about emotional honesty. It's not that only. It's the spirituality of truth. Vulnerability says, I'm going to tell you who I am, and I'm going to allow you to reflect back to me if that's accurate. So if I go up to somebody and I say, I should have been in the NBA being 6'8" and 225 and totally ripped, I don't know why they didn't draft me, I need somebody to come up to me like Sam Manuel did one day and say, you know, Russ, height is a talent too. See, the vulnerability is saying what I dream of, but the relationship vulnerability is Sam also being able to say what he knows to be true as a former NFL player. So vulnerability is both ways, the spirituality of truth, empathy. Once we see our need and we start talking about the truth, then we get empathy, the spirituality of understanding. See, when we face the truth, then someone can be empathetic. And so Sam can say to me, hey, you may not be tall enough and strong enough to have played in sports, but guess what? You write nice, so write some things, you know? And he's got empathy, understands me, and he gives me a new vision. I think a lot of us get mad when we get the truth, and so we never receive the empathy of understanding. Sometimes we need the empathy of understanding to say, you know what, you're great the way you are. It's like that Billy Joel song, I love you just the way you are. I hope I got that one right. That's off the top of my head. The spiritual way of understanding. Number 4, forgiveness. Once the humility is there, you see the need. Once the vulnerability is there, and you're willing to talk about the truth. Once the empathy is there, where your response to the truth is understanding each other, then the forgiveness is there like oil in the car to keep things running smoothly. Because when we're vulnerable, we're empathetic, we're humble, and we start to know each other, we're going to hurt each other somehow. We're going to make mistakes, we're going to blow it because of the imperfection of humanity, and the spirituality of love is forgiveness. You know what? We can't be connected to people without forgiveness. Oh, I should have done a whole message on that, shouldn't I? But you can read the Bible, it talks all about it. Faithfulness. Once you have humility, vulnerability, empathy, and forgiveness, guess what you learn to have? Faithfulness, the spirituality of commitment. I will stick with you no matter what you're like. I brought this in. It's a little song I like. It's by Pink and I think Chris Stapleton. I think that's his name. Chris Stapleton's on it. That guy's a bad dude. I don't listen to a lot of his music, but he's a bad dude. Shout out to Chris Stapleton for being a bad dude, man. You can throw down. But Pink, she gets serious. Even if you see my scars, even if I break your heart, if we're 1,000,000 miles apart, do you think you'd walk away? If I get lost in all the noise, even if I lose my voice, flirt with all the other boys, what would you say? Could you? Could you? Could you love me anyway? That's what faithfulness is. Faithfulness is I'll take all your ugly, I'll take all your bad. I'll take all the times you hurt me and love you anyway. I think for many of us, we think connection is all those things that are superficial. But this is what spirituality is. This is what Christianity gives us that no other religion can give us. Number 4, forgiveness, which locks it down. And when you have humility, vulnerability, empathy, forgiveness, and faithfulness down, guess what? Then you get trust. A lot of us say, hey, I don't trust people. That's because you have abandoned the first 5. Trust is not where you start. Trust is where you end up when you do 1 through 5. That's what I say. You say, well, you're wrong. I might be wrong. But so far, I'm living a life with good relationships. So if I'm wrong, it's working out pretty right. Bam! All right, let's keep moving. Number 3, The spirituality of being relatable, seeing people instead of problems. I talk to some people in the ministry and that work jobs and that run things in companies. And one of the things I've noticed, because this is how I started, I used to see people as problems, not people. Do you see problems, not people? You walk down the street and you just see problems. Oh man, there's a poor person. Oh man, there's a homeless person. Oh, there's a person who looks dangerous. Oh, there's a person who looks like they're a liberal. Here's a person who looks like a conservative. You ever look like that? Why are they driving that junk car? Why are they driving that expense car? We're just going around and we're just seeing problems. In 1 Corinthians 12, this is talking about the church. You wonder what the church is all about? Church is not a building, it's a way of life. Church is not a building, it's a way of life. Church is not about membership, it's a way of life. Church is not about a behavior, it's a heart condition. You don't go to church because you have to. You go to church because of the simply irresistible attraction of the connections. As it is, there are many parts but one body. That's how God describes the church. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. Remember we covered need? Or again, the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. Remember I told you the connection starts with humility, the spirituality of need. That's where it starts. Church doesn't work if you don't see a need for anybody in it. If you don't see a need for God or any of the people, then eventually you're not going to see a value for church. If you don't go to church, it's because you don't see a need in your life. You don't see a need for people. I see a need not only for my wife, not only for my kids, but I see a need for friends. Do you? How about out there? How about during the pandemic? Are you really happy because you don't have to see anybody? Or are you like, man, this is great. This is awesome. All day is all me. All day is all me. It's awesome. The world should be like this. Verse 22, on the contrary, those parts of the body that are weaker are indispensable. Guess what he says? And you can go read the whole chapter. He says there's all kinds of amazing parts of the body, but the ones that are most indispensable are the weaker. That's why it's a sin not to pay attention to people with disabilities, because they're the weaker. And you can't have church without that. I've been to a lot of churches. I've spoken in a lot of churches. I've talked to a lot of people that are in churches, lead churches, parts of churches. And many of them don't care about disability at all. I don't know how they make peace with verse 22. You say, well, you feel that way because you're a parent of kids with disabilities. Yeah, I assume God blessed us to have kids with disabilities to make me aware of the truth of scriptures. Remember what I said last week? Of course you don't. I barely remember what I said yesterday. But I talked about that our lives are about destiny, not history. I believe God blessed us with kids with special needs so that I would care for the first time in my life about the millions of people in the world who have disabilities, and bring my voice and my wife bring her voice to it and bring other voices there. We have a lot of parents with kids with special needs, but more than that, we have more people who don't have kids with special needs who have been in the fight. On the contrary, those parts of the body that are weak are indispensable. Those with emotional health challenges, those with financial challenges, those without the education maybe to get the kind of job they need to survive, they're indispensable. Those who don't speak eloquently, those who don't have great titles, they're indispensable. In verse 23, and those parts of the body that we consider less honorable, we clothe these with greater honor, and our unrespectable parts are treated with greater respect. You don't have to go to Stanford. You don't have to go to Cal. I'm glad that those universities exist, and I think they're awesome. And as Scott Galloway likes to say, they turn unremarkable people into remarkable people. But the beauty of Christianity, it turns any person who's unremarkable into a remarkable person. You don't have to be able to get into Stanford. You don't have to be able to get into Cal. You don't have to be able to get into an Ivy League school. You don't have to be some brainiac and super smart person. You don't have to invent Facebook or invent Google. You just have to be you. And in a true church, you will be honored, which our respectable parts do not need. If you went to a great university and you have a great job, you don't need all that attention. Instead, God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the less honorable. People wonder, why do we have e-life? Because we're giving greater honor to the less honorable, to the unnoticed and the forgotten. That's why I love this church, because we've captured that mission, and you know what? It's changed the world, not only in helping people become Christians, but in making the world a better place. And what better story to underline this than a story about e-gaming and the family Combs, one of my favorites. Let's take a look.
Are you a gamer? Because this is a story about how a little bit of faith and a lot of gaming transformed a family and an entire community. I'm Scott Colvin, and my wife Margot and I love being with all of the great people in Silicon Valley North. Chris and Cindy Combs live busy lives with 3 kids, Rachel, Christopher, and Jack. The Cohn family is great, but it's not always been easy. Like all of us, they have been through some very difficult times and have had many obstacles to overcome, being a family with special needs and managing the social isolation that can often accompany that.
Through these times of difficulty, their daughter Rachel always desired to be close and to connect with her brothers, but didn't know how. Through studying the Bible, God put it on her heart to start playing video games as a way to get her brothers involved.
God put it on my heart, and it wasn't really like coordinated between me and my parents at first. It was more like I just was playing this game, and I was like, I kind of want someone to play it with. So I got Christopher to get it, I got Jack to get it, and then my dad wanted to do it, and then it just became kind of a family thing, like kind of on its own.
As Rachel started studying the Bible and started becoming a disciple, her attitude and heart towards her brothers really started changing, and she actually became a lot more selfless in the way she spent time with them.
This was really great for the boys in particular because it is very challenging for them to have social opportunities. And so, for us to try to get them to play dates or things like that with our schedules was really hard. And so this was not only a way for us to connect as a family, but for them to actually connect with other people in the church or people that they go to school with.
Because of their faith, two great things happened. Rachel was baptized and e-gaming was born.
E-gaming came from, our family culture of playing video games, but I also began meeting some of the kids at Jack's school, and then the realization that these kids we have two boys who are borderline autistic, high-functioning kids, and this category of kids has a very difficult time being accepted and included everywhere they go.
Their faith sparked a movement to use gaming as a way to build community. They bought 16 gaming systems so that they could host events for others to enjoy the social aspect of gaming. These events brought typical kids with special needs, education professionals, and parents together to build relationships.
And it was wildly successful, but I shouldn't have been surprised by that. We were throwing video game parties with pizza. How could you not want to do that? I mean, what else is there, right?
It gave opportunity for a lot of kids who might not meet each other in normal social circles to actually interact and become friends.
It has continued to grow as they hosted an after-school program for everyone at Jack's school, which opened up even more doors and opportunities. Now, they don't want to stop here. Their goal is to set up competitions in local high schools so that any kid can participate in the social aspects of being on a team and working together. The Combs e-gaming story can inspire us all that a little bit of faith can not just bring a family together, but can transform an entire community.
I don't know what else needs to be said. That said it all. Number 4, the spirituality of being digital, seeing opportunity instead of opposition. That's the Cohn family. We're living in a digital world with social media, technology everywhere. And unfortunately, sometimes as Christians, we can be living in a princess phone world. I hate to tell you, but the rotary phone is gone. The push button phone is gone. I mean, you might be able to pick one up, but when you pick it up from the guy who sold it to you, he's laughing all the way to the bank that you actually spent money on that thing. Let me tell you something. We need to seize the opportunity instead of feeling that this world is opposed to us. We need to learn how to operate on social media because that's where connections can be made. A lot of people use social media to have connections. They don't just want to talk online. They want to connect in person and face to face. Another reason on Tuesday and Wednesday that we need to launch in all of our sectors a time of prayer with somebody. Just pick out a friend, or if you go to church at midweek, pick out a group and take some time to pray just specifically about a vaccine that will take COVID-19 down eliminate the dangers, and allow people to get back doing things like e-gaming in rooms. Do you see that? Do you ever freak out like I do at movies when people are shaking hands and sitting down and eating together like normal? You go, wait a minute, you don't have your mask on. And you realize, oh, wait a minute, we don't have to live this life forever. God can come through, and he is. Check out the news about vaccines. And I know a lot of us have political points on all that stuff. You know what? I'm not into this thing for politics. I'm in this thing for the saving of lives and the bringing people back together and to seeing the opportunity instead of opposition on the internet. Instead of looking at the internet as a place people are unfriendly to Christianity, maybe what we need to do is learn how to be social on social media. And I think that's important. In order for the world to be more connected, we have to be social on social media. Look what it says in Colossians 4, verse 2. Devote yourselves to prayer with an alert mind and a thankful heart. See how I got that prayer in there for you? We got to pray. Pray for us, too, that God will give us many opportunities to speak about his mysterious plan concerning Christ. That is why I'm here in chains. Pray that I will proclaim this message as clearly as I should. And look at verse 5. Live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. We need to take a commitment, make a commitment to how we live on social media. I don't think a lot of us take it seriously. I know I've had to work really hard on thinking about what I post and what I say. Thinking in terms of, I want to make sure that when I post and when I speak, as best I can, I'm connecting and not disconnecting people. How do you do it in verse 6? Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. There are millions of people on digital all the time. I run into them all the time. I have story upon story of people who have contacted me about our company, who have contacted me about inclusion, articles I've written that want to use them to share around the world. E-life, esports has gone around the world. Why? Because when we talk about it on social media, we avoid the fights, we avoid the battles. There's a lot of intense argument in autism about a variety of topics. But we split the middle and go, we're trying to connect people, not disconnect them. I've got a lot of opinions, but I have to rein those opinions in order to connect people and not disconnect people. And that's the goal. And so let's nail it down. There are 4 words to remember. Freedom. Freedom from the complexity of humanism or self-reliance. I added that to make clear what humanism is. Number 2, relational. Seeing people instead of labels. Maybe that'll help us not hate Republicans and hate Democrats, hate black people, hate white people. Relatable, seeing people, not problems. Instead of dishonoring and pushing people out, including people. Digital, seeing opportunity, not opposition. Not being so afraid of what someone may troll or what someone may say or how someone may react, but doing the best we can to season our conversations with the kind of salt and inspiration that makes people be attracted instead of repelled. That's pretty simple. What are we talking about? Get rid of that princess phone. 461-5558 should never be called. And get that smartphone. Hey Siri, do me a favor. Call Bernard and Tracy Jones.
Hi, my name is Messer Moala, and I have the pleasure of bringing you a story from Alameda. I want to tell you about Bernard and Tracy Jones and how in one of their most difficult times of their lives, God was able to turn their pain into purpose by using one of their greatest passion.
When their son BJ turned 7, the Joneses thought it would be a good time to have a second child. That year was the first time Tracy experienced the painful loss of a miscarriage. Bernard and Tracy still persevered in trying to have another child. However, she continued to struggle with fertility issues, and over the next few years, she experienced 3 more miscarriages.
That was, a really challenging time in our relationship with God, actually. It wasn't easy at all. I feel like I had a lot of really dark days, after that 3rd time, I was like, wow, how do you survive this spiritually? How do you survive, disappointment after disappointment? And you're not just going, for me, not just going through it emotionally, but also physically. And, and I feel like I had to have a turning point in my relationship with God.
But through those times of loss, pain, and grief, Tracy found comfort in the scriptures that remind her, even in our hardest times, God can use our lives to comfort others. Determined not to be overcome by the discouragement and despair, Tracy chose to focus on having vision and purpose by deciding to use her passion for dance and music to serve others.
She had an idea to start E-Dance after the third miscarriage, and I think the thing that came to her heart and her mind is that if I can't have another kid, I'm going to do what I can to help other kids. And we both love dancing. There's times we clear the living room and we just throw music with BJ and we just and just dance, all types of, dancing. And so we thought, okay, what can we do? Something we love, but yet, it be able to benefit other kids. And Tracy came up with this idea of going to Zumba and starting a Zumba class pretty much for kids, which we later named E-Dance.
In 2016, Tracy got certified as a Zumba instructor. It was during this time she got the vision to start E-Dance, an inclusive dance program for all children. She started thinking about creating a safe and fun space for kids to dance and move. They found a gym near their home and decided to rent it. Word spread around the neighborhood and community. The first day they had E-Dance, 30 families from the community came to participate.
People want things they can belong to. And so I think, God moved Tracy's heart to be able to, take care of people. And I think, it just continues to grow. And so our goal is that we have one in every county, we have one, where kids can feel like, they belong.
The Joneses were so encouraged that God could help them see a need and fulfill it, even in the midst of their own pain and suffering. The program has since grown to serve many children around the Bay Area. E-Dance was also able to perform at the Golden State Warriors pregame show. In 2018, Tracy surprisingly got pregnant, and now they have a 20-month-old son, Xander Jones. Bernard and Tracy's story inspires us that no matter what we're going through in life, God can use it for purpose.
Bernard and Tracy. Shout out Bernard, San Jose State. Shout out Tracy, go Cardinals, Stanford, California kids. What an awesome story. Let's pray for communion. Father in heaven, we thank you for Jesus and his sacrifice. We also thank you for Jesus and his example, and we see his example in Bernard and Tracy and all the other stories we saw today. As we break the bread and take the fruit of the vine, we celebrate your name, we exalt you, and we lift you up. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. So while we are taking our communion, and we hope you are able to really reflect on the time of inspiration we've had together about being able to connect people in a disconnected world and not just thinking about connecting ourselves. We also have something special for you, and I want you to take a look at this because we have good news. In our contribution video, take a look.
Before we take up our contribution this morning, I wanted you all to know how outstanding your response was to our special contribution last week. You smashed expectations, but more importantly, you've made it possible for us to inspire and raise up the next generation of young leaders. You've guaranteed that we'll have a teen and campus center available for our students to build their future with. And you've provided the resources to continue making spiritually inspiring content available to anyone, anywhere in the world. Thank you.
I'm excited today to tell you that for the past 2 decades, your giving has allowed our financials to be audited by 2 of the world's largest and most reputable accounting firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers and Grant Thornton. Now, having a qualified and strong administration protects our giving as well as our reputation as a church. Thank you for helping us build a great administration. Now, just in case, for those of us who want to know a little bit more about what an audit is, we've prepared something special for you. Thank you again for your generous giving.
Every year, we hire an independent third-party accounting firm to perform an audit to ensure the financial statements fairly represent the results of operations, and proper internal controls are in place to protect your generous giving. We have decided to be audited every year because our goal is to operate with the highest levels of professionalism, accountability, and integrity. For over 20 years, we have been audited by PricewaterhouseCoopers and Grant Thornton, 2 of the world's largest and most reputable accounting firms. These auditors will ask questions, perform tests, request backup, review documentation of transactions, check our calculations, analyze our operations, benchmark with other organizations, and interview staff. Based on their independent review, they will issue an opinion on our financial statements and the integrity of our internal controls. We've received the highest opinion available every year, which is an unqualified opinion. We want to thank you again for your generous giving, and we are excited to build the future together.
I want to say again, thank you to all of you who are watching, and to all of the Christians in our church. You're just so awesome, and you've done so well. And thank you to all of you who volunteer that we can't mention your names at the different e-programs. And so as we close out today, I just want to close out being grateful. Grateful for what God has done among us, and hopefully catching a vision that it's going to get even better in the 10 years ahead. That's right, 10 years ahead, we're going to go on a run, and then after that, we'll go on another run, but let's do the first quarter first. God bless you. Same bad time, same bad channel, and as I like to always add, same bad place. Take a look at this. We got a little something special for you. It's a song. It was written by Tim Williams years ago. Tim came to me and he said he had a song because he got inspired as he saw my struggle, my battle, and other parents' battle to take care of and include their special needs kid. And really, I always think of 1 Corinthians 2 when I read it, that God wants to demonstrate through all of us his power, his love, and his greatness. And Tim called it demonstration. Here it is. Esports slideshow to join it. Again, have an awesome time.
Oh.